Acharya Skatarasa Shishimari Savandres, Avoy Charanaravinda, Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Sandiviti founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Namse Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Dharpan Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Maya Purnamati Dham. Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai. Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Thai Gopanana. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Nidhaya. Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Vichaya Nirvisaya Sasana. Are we able to broadcast it or not?
Yes, it's broadcasting now, but we couldn't figure out how to push it on your...
If you go upstairs, bring my phone, and there's a stand next to the phone. Well, actually...
On your phone, if you go to ISKCON Richmond and share it, so it will be on your page.
I have to go on my page?
Yes, and then share it.
So just hit Facebook on my page, and it'll go right to my page, and you can share it. You know how to do it?
No, but you have to share it from your account.
No, take my phone, hit Facebook.
Oh, I see, okay.
And that is way too far away, so should we bring that phone as close as possible? Because audio-wise, it's too far. Closer the better.
Is this close enough, Prabhu? Maybe that's closer.
As close as you can do.
Can move it ahead of you, Prabhu. There's an outlet there actually behind. I think this should be.
Yeah. Okay, boys, have a seat. So, when I was on the plane, I was digging up some old files that I prepared on this topic of balance. I once did another course, and balance was part of it. Then I realized we need the whole weekend to cover it, and maybe 2 weekends, maybe a lifetime. So there's so much you could talk about regarding balance. And I have chosen one aspect of it. Have you ever tried to understand something in Krishna consciousness, and you get like one side of it, and then you get another side of it, and they appear to be like confusing or different? And so that would be one definition of balance. How do you balance ideas that don't always make sense? Like Prabhupada said, every man should remain single and every woman should get married. Did you know that he said that? Yeah. It's right in it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what do we do? So it's our... Oh, we're doing the mind tonight?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was balance. Oh, okay.
Tomorrow morning.
Oh, tomorrow morning. I'm sorry. Okay, the mind. Oh, that's easy. One of the... I thought we were doing balance today. Okay, so we have more time tomorrow. That's good. So... one of the things that Prabhupada said about the mind in Bhagavatam was he gave the example of a hunter. And a hunter, so a hunter captures an animal. This is not a good example, but anyway, it makes the point. Hunter captures an animal. And then sometimes after they capture it, they trap it. Maybe the animal is injured or something. They take it out of the trap. And often, then it runs away. You think you've got it, but it runs away. So Prabhupada said, the mind is like that. Once you think you've captured it, don't take it easy. Because it may run off in the wrong direction with the wrong thoughts. So I want to explain a little bit why the mind does that and how we can deal with that. Prabhupada uses the word conditioned soul. Have you ever heard Prabhupada use that?
Yes.
Conditioned. What's so interesting is that's a psychological term. It's a spiritual term, but modern psychologists use that word also. Conditioned. So condition means, we're familiar with it from the word samskar. Condition means an impression that creates a habit or a particular belief or particular way you look at things. Probably the best example would be, you ever seen people make bowls out of clay? They spin them, and then you can mold them any way you want. So we are conditioned or molded in a certain way. Now you're Indian, you're in America, whether you know it or not, you're getting molded with American samskars. And you'll notice it when you go back to India, especially if you've been here a while. If you've been here 5-10 years, you go back to India, you'll realize you're partially American now. You would identify. So you got molded, right? Not just the way you speak, but the way you think and and the standards you're used to. And you go back to India and you go, oh my God, it's so dirty. But you never thought it was dirty when you lived in India. But now it's different here, so you get used to people driving in one lane and things being clean and so forth, right? So conditioning works that way. We're all raised in a certain way. Certain things are taught to us. We have certain beliefs. And if we were raised 100 years ago, we would be much different. You agree? It's very interesting to ask yourself, what would I be like if I was born in 1900? Or if I was born in 1823 in England, what would I be like? I'd be much different. Or even if I was born in 1983 in England, I would be different than I was born in 1983 in America. Right? So, a question comes up, or a confusion comes up for devotees who don't understand this conditioning. And this is the confusion. Is my head being cut off on that camera?
I can see it through.
It's being cut off on my...
Would you like me
Being
to?
cut off here, I don't know. If it's just... If you're doing it... No, it's okay. No, it's fine. It's it. So, we all experience that, even if we're not practicing spiritual life, we all experience problems with the mind. You want to go this way, and the mind says, whoops, why is it playing? Did I hit the wrong button? Is it supposed to play? Whoops, I think I just logged off. No, right. So, say, you want to do this? The mind says, no, do that. You say, I need to do this now. Your mind says, do it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, do it tomorrow. We'll have that experience. So it's not just I'm trying to control my senses and I'm trying to practice spiritual life and it's difficult and my mind says it's too hard. And everybody has this problem. Why do we have this problem? It's conditioning. Conditioning is the mold. We've been molded. The problem is a lot of the mold wasn't conscious. Someone else molded it for us. Look at our society today. Advertising. Where's advertising? It's on every shoe, every purse, every shirt, every bus, inside and outside, every taxi, every billboard you drive by, every magazine, every 10 minutes on YouTube, whatever. It's pervasive. They say we're getting something like 2,000 messages a day. And basically the message is telling you you're insufficient. You need this product, it'll make you complete. Right? So we are unconsciously being programmed to feel like there's something wrong with us, or that we will be happier if we have this product or this position or this amount of wealth or whatever. It's not that we actually think that way. We've been programmed to think that way. And other people think that way about us because we get a new car and they go, oh, that's a nice car. So that boosts your ego up 3 points, right? Or, you got a new pair of like really cool whatever, shoes or this or glasses. Whoa! So we're getting it everywhere, right? Even we don't want it. So then we adopt it, we buy into it. So then it becomes, what was unconscious becomes conscious. So then we start thinking that way. Oh, I need this. Oh, I'm cool because I have Ray-Bans. Or because I have a BMW. If you're in Germany, let me tell you, if you have a BMW, you're ordinary. BMW is like Ford in Germany. It is. So what's cool is also culturally conditioned. If you walk around an Indian village with ripped up jeans, you're not cool. If you walk in Beverly Hills with ripped up jeans, you're cool. Isn't it? Especially if they cost you $150. Right? But Indian village is like, that's not cool at all. So we're very much molded and conditioned. So when we say, I have trouble with my mind, or I have doubts in myself, I want to do something, but I just don't have confidence, but I really want to do it. So that why wouldn't the mind give you confidence if you want to do it? It doesn't make sense. Why would you have a mind that works against you? Right? It doesn't, I want to do this, I set my mind to do it, everything's focused, and then this little voice says, loser, you'll never do that. It doesn't make any sense, does it? What's going on? It's that past conditioning from who knows when. This life, last life, who knows how many lives. There's this conditioning, there's these samskars, and all the impressions we got in many lives and in this life. And so that's why sometimes we want to focus, or we want to try to achieve something, or we set goals, and our minds, you'll never do that. You tried to do that before. Why bother? Take it easy. Isn't it? So it works against us materially, and it works against us spiritually. And that's why Krishna says mind is the friend or the enemy. So obviously, if you want to achieve anything material or spiritual, you need to have some control of your mind. So it's actually very simple, but at the same time it's so subtle that it's not so simple. And I'll try to explain it philosophically, and I think you'll realize the simplicity of it, how easy it is to control the mind, and how interesting this topic is. We know we're not the body, right? I am not an American, you are not in India. But I think when you wake up in the morning, somewhere in your mind, or when you walk into the office, you feel like you're an Indian in America, right? And I feel like I'm an American, and I lived in India. I feel like an American in India. And we know theoretically, intellectually, philosophically, right? We know that. Why do we identify with it? Well, that's what the false ego does. The false ego identifies. Because if you identify with the body, it gives you some position, power, something, or some control. If you're smart and you think, I'm smart, that's false ego identifying with your personality. Or I'm a beautiful man, I'm a beautiful woman. That's what the false ego wants to do. So, if you think, if Divya, Nam thinks, this is my house, I have a beautiful house. It's actually Krishna's house. But if he ever thinks this is my house, the false ego wants to think, hey, look at me. I came to America, I got a good job, I bought a good house. The false ego always wants to identify, this is mine. Here Krishna, here's a donation, and the rest is mine. Okay? That's what the false ego wants to do. So, here's the problem. The false ego, that's just what it does. So when you have a thought, the false ego says, that's your thought. That's my thought. That's my identity. That thought is me. It's just subconscious. Even if that thought is working against everything we want to achieve in life, the false ego will say, you are the mind, just like it says we're the body. I mean, how difficult is it to detach from the body? And it's more difficult to detach from the mind. Did you know? I could kind of, I messed my knee up, right? So I could kind of understand, the mechanics of the body, and my knee was going whoop, whoop, whoop. It was like, okay, the body's a machine. I kind of got it. It was a little easier. And then they showed all the x-rays and the MRIs, and you're looking at your bones, and it's like, okay, that's not really me. It's a little easier. But the thoughts, we identify thoughts as who we are, personality. What do you like? Oh, I'm introverted. That's who I am. I'm an introvert. I'm an intellectual. I'm an athlete. I'm a programmer. Whatever it is. I'm a, whatever. Our personality is very much connected with who we think we are. So some people identify with the body and some with the mind, right? So when we have a thought, the thought, you're walking down the street and you see something in a store. Now that looks good. The mind says, you want that. How many of us, when we hear that thought, you want that, you like that, you need that, think, that's just the thought and it's not me? Generally we don't. That's the nature of false ego, because it identifies with the thought. Now, here's a little mantra for you. Don't believe everything you think. If you can master that, you've mastered the mind. Because that's the problem. We believe everything we think. And psychologists have studied this. But Lord Buddha knew this before the psychologists did. But the psychologists studied, if you get an idea in your mind, you believe it, and someone else comes and proves it's wrong, you still believe it. Because you identify with that's just what my mother told me. No, here's the scientific data. No, that must be wrong. Buddha told a story. There was a fire, and this man was away from home. He came back, and he found his son dead in the fire. And his wife had died long before that. So he buried his son, and he was very depressed. And so happens that wasn't his son. He didn't know that. And his son came back one night, knocked on the door, and said, "Who's that?" And he said, "It's me, Daddy." He goes, "My son's dead. It can't be you." He said, "No, it's me. I'm not dead." And went back and forth. He wouldn't let him in the house. And then the son had to go away. And Buddha was teaching, you get an idea in your head. Once you get that idea, when the truth comes knocking at your door, you can't be open to it. It's like, that's the way conditioning works. It's like, and so, but modern psychologists have studied that. You get an idea and you identify with it, and that's it. That's how it is. So, don't believe everything you think. Now, it requires detachment to see, here's a thought, and it's just a thought. Now, we know there are certain thoughts which are useful and certain thoughts which are not useful, right? And we're learning in spiritual life how to think, how to feel, what to believe, what to have faith in, and what not to. The what not to is all the conditioning. And the conditioning, it always comes up. Especially when we're weak in spiritual life, more of it comes up. When we're stronger, less of it comes up, because we're going higher, sattva guna, or transcending. So better things come up. So in America, as you can see, in advertising is heavily predominated by gross or subtle sexual symbols, and women are used everywhere in advertising. So this has happened almost from the beginning of advertising, way back when. It's like the beautiful woman in a bikini leaning on a sports car, which means if you buy the sports car, the woman comes with it, right? Or very soon there'll be a woman in your car with you. Yeah, but anyway, they've studied it, and they see, things will sell like 20 times more if there's sexual connotations in it. So they use that, right? So I grew up in America, And what did I see growing up? Advertisements with women. But it's 20 times or 50 times worse now, right? Because it's just pervasive. So what does it do for a man? It makes woman a sex symbol, not a mother, not someone to respect. So it makes these impressions, right? You want to practice spiritual life, you have to think the opposite, right? Otherwise, you'll have difficulty, and if you want to be married, you'll have difficulty. You'll just have difficulty with women in general. So now, like I became brahmachari, many of us Americans when we were young boys, 19 brahmachari. Raised in America as a hippie, free sex, now brahmachari. Difficult? What were the samskars? I don't want to tell you how bad it was because we're devotees. But I went to college in a very liberal area, and it was bad. Really bad. It's like one big party, basically. So those samskars, right? So now we become brahmacharis. Okay, I'm going to do it. I want to do it. I want to live a different life. I believe Bhagavad Gita. I believe in Prabhupada. I do it year after year after year, and one day these samskars come up, pounding at you from all sides. Where did that come from? What we have to be able to do is not say or give into it, because usually what we do is when there are very strong desires and strong thoughts, because we identify with them, we say, I have to do it, it's me. I have to do this, why do you have to do it? Just last week you were saying, I have to do this. This is what I'm dedicating my life to. And now this week you're saying, I have to go do this. Other thing that has nothing to do with that. That's the conditioning. But if you realize it's conditioning, you can step back and say, oh, that's me from the past. As we say, a blast from the past. That's a blast from the past. It's not me now. And if I recognize it as a blast from the past, I can say, oh, that is my past conditioning. As Rabindra Swarup said nicely, when you become a devotee and you make a decision, you, the soul, your mind disagrees. So you become a devotee, but your mind doesn't. Your mind says, not for me, right? So we're dealing with this, I want to be a devotee, and the mind saying, I don't want to be a devotee. And that's why sometimes we become confused. Why would I have all these thoughts if I'm dedicating myself? What to speak if I'm chanting 16 rounds every day? I thought it was just supposed to go away. And these thoughts come. Once you understand that those thoughts will go away gradually as you become purified, two things happen. Number one, you don't become discouraged because you just know it's just stuff coming up as part of the purification process. And number two, you don't have to act on it. There's a nice verse this amazing verse in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, where a devotee, he's saying, I recognize that I have these desires. He said, I don't even care if due to my past activities, these desires are here, because all I am going to do is serve you, Krishna. So put it in a modern context. You're shopping and you have kids, and your kids are pulling on you, buy me this, buy me that. And it's just like, I know when I go in the store, for the next 20 minutes, they're going to say, buy me this, buy me that, and I'm not going to buy them any of it. And so you just deal with it. You know that's what's going to happen. And that's exactly what's happening. The mind is going, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And if you know it's just the conditioning, then you say, okay, whatever, that's just the conditioning. Because you separate it from your mind and you've identified what you want on a deeper level. I want to be Krishna conscious. I want to advance spiritually. I want to be detached. That's what I want. These thoughts, if they're not aligned with that, I don't want them. I don't need them. So what do? Tolerate them. And they'll go. Just let them pass. What do we say? What's the saying? If you want to get rid of a guest, don't feed them. Right? Starve a fever, starve a guest. They'll both leave. Right? So the problem is when these thoughts come, we don't starve them. We entertain them. Dayato vishayam punsam. Krishna says, meditate on it, and what happens? It gets bigger. It's the way advertising works. Right? commercial. Same. You see that same commercial at a certain point. You've meditated on it enough. You say, okay, I want to get that. Here comes the Apple. What's the Apple X? It's like flying through space. It's just this phone, and they make it look like the next best thing to your wife is this phone, isn't it? Something like that, right? And you see it, and you've got you bought iPhone 7 last year, and now you're going in a state of depression. You have to go to your psychologist. Oh, I bought iPhone 7, and they came out with 10. Isn't it? That's what they're doing. But when you understand what's going on, you understand how subversive this world is and the conditioning, then you can say, actually, I don't need that. I don't want that. And then you connect with what's important for you. And that's the key. Connect with what's important, and then understand all these other thoughts and ideas are just past conditioning trying to allure you. And you can just look at them and say, no, that's not what I want. The mind saying, if you had this, you'd be happy. I already had 10 of them and I'm not happy. No, 11's your lucky number. Isn't it? Isn't the way the mind works? It's of course it's Maya's trick. That's the mode of passion, because the mode of passion cannot be satisfied. So it doesn't matter how much you get. So with intelligence and with the right desire, then you can control it. Because when the mind says, oh, but number 11's your lucky number, and you go, no, it's not my lucky number. Krishna's my lucky number. This is not going to work. I'm not going to be a fool and endeavor for this. I've learned my lesson. So it's really important to connect with what you really want, what's really important for you. Because if you don't, society will tell you what's important for you, and you'll kind of be mindless. You won't actually be connected with what's important. You won't be able to think clearly through it, because they'll think for you. Make up your mind, like you ask Kuli Shekhar, your mother asks you, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. You want chapatis? I don't know. You want this? I don't know. And your mother says, make up your mind. It's either chapatis or puris or this or that. Make up your mind or I'll make it up for you. So either he's going to tell you or you're just going to give him, right? You're going to decide, right? So it's the same way. If you don't make up your mind, Maya will make it up for you, guaranteed, right? And I think it's so important for us to understand how we're conditioned, especially in this society. And I just want to give you a little history that I think will help you tremendously. History of materialism, in case you don't know. Before the Industrial Revolution, before the steamship, before travel, worldwide travel and trade routes were open, it was all local village culture. And that's what Mahatma Gandhi wanted India to be. You get what grows in the village. You get what's local, what can be transported by a bullock cart in a recent, and if it's across the world, you don't get it. You just, you've got to live. And you don't need industry because, whatever you need, the village can make locally. So you don't have these horrible jobs. It's okay for tomorrow. Yeah. So life used to be pretty simple. You had, we have this back to earth movement now. Well, that's what it used to be, because we industrialized. We moved off the earth into factories and offices, and now people are realizing it doesn't work. But what the history was that once trade routes were open, and once industry developed, then you could produce products very cheaply and then transport them around the world so people could afford them. And especially America was very wealthy, and they could afford it. Ford figured out the assembly line. So, you imagine, there's no cars, and then he develops this prototype of a car, and people are like, oh my God. It used to be horse and buggy, now it's an automobile. That's like revolutionizes everything. And then a few years later, he figures out how to make it so everybody could afford it. That's what happened. All of a sudden, industry boomed, bankers, businessmen were super wealthy. Wealth was being spread. Average person could afford things they could never afford before. All of a sudden, people were buying things they didn't need. You know, there was no such thing as a department store before 1850 because there was nothing to buy. Industrial revolution. You know, it's like if you know the history of cinema, when they started making movies, it was the movie companies that owned the movie theaters. So I'm from California, Los Angeles, so I grew up around Hollywood. So they owned the movie theaters. That's, you know, that was the only place you could see it. And when I was a kid, it cost 10 cents. And I went to a new movie every week. Maybe 25 at the most. Mostly horror movies, yeah. So the same way, the movie theaters were owned and operated by the movie industry. So now all these goods, and then previously to live that way and buy that way was considered kind of extravagant or maybe even degraded or decadent. People wouldn't do it. But it became popularized. You know, that this is, you know, nice recreation. So now instead of going out to nature with your family, people will go to malls and go shopping. As you can see, you know, that's the new religion. One man said the cathedrals of consumerism. You know, the interesting thing happened at the same time as materialism was increasing, religion was decreasing, because religion is what would prevent that from happening, because religion says simplicity, right? And the bankers, the wealthy businessmen, society in general was turning against monarchy and religion, because religious people said, we have divine right, we can do whatever we want, and then they didn't always do right things. So basically the business class took over the world, and they still rule the world. And so consumerism, what happened is we developed economy that now was based on people buying things they didn't need, and the economy would not work. So this was presented in about the 1920s, I think, in Congress, that if we're going to expand the economy so that there's more wealth for everyone, we have to incite greed in people. We have to get people to buy things they don't need. It was a conscious effort. And then advertising was insidious. Advertising took it over and just brainwashed people into thinking you need all these things you don't need, and you need new things all the time, and then planned obsolescence, things break down and so forth. So what we see today is there's been a programming within the psyche that if you have more, you're better. If you have more money, you'll be happier. You'll be more, people will honor you more. You'll have more prestige. If you have better position, you'll be happier. And everybody got programmed with it. Even if you don't know you were programmed with it, just go home and look at your house and ask yourself, what do I need? And like, what do I need to live? Last year I traveled for 6 months. 1 suitcase, 1 carry-on. And I brought more things than I actually used. So I can guarantee you 1 suitcase, 1 carry-on. And my carry-on was camera, recorder. It was all the stuff I used for my preaching. It wasn't even personal stuff. But even that, 1 carry-on, 1 suitcase, 6 months, and it was too much. And I'm going from cold, southern, I had to have cold and hot. We don't need that much. So we've all been programmed. So it's good to understand how you've been programmed. You've been programmed by your parents. What did your parents tell you? They told you, if you work hard, get a good education, you'll get a good job. If you get a good job, you'll make good money. And if you get good money, bingo, you'll be happy, right? Yeah, you'll be happy or you'll be in the mental hospital, one or the other. You're working 14 hours a day and you're totally depressed and you have a beautiful home and your kids are taking drugs. Yeah, that didn't work. It doesn't work for everybody, right? And more it's not working, As we say, the American dream became the American nightmare. So people who understand this and understand what they want and what they need, a lot of people pull out of this. They'll say, there's a new paradigm. You want to hear the new paradigm? This is so nice. 2 people working part-time instead of 2 people working full-time. There's a new paradigm going, you know. We don't want to work so much. Okay, we'll reduce the size of everything, but we'll increase the amount of time we have. Interesting, right? How much time do we need for sadhana? You need a lot, right? And when you're working, you leave for work at 7, you come back at 7, 8. That's not a good schedule for sadhana, is it? So people are starting to think, okay, I got in this system. You know, I was just, my parents said do it, and I wasn't thinking. Now I have to look at it and say, is this what I want? I'm not saying you don't want it or it's bad for everybody. You may be a doctor, you may be working 12 hours every day, and you love it, and you're helping people, you know, whatever, and you're helping people in Krishna consciousness also, you know. I'm not saying this generically for everybody, but I'm saying if you understand how you ended up where you ended up, then you can ask the question, is this where I would have chosen to end up? If I knew, I would have ended up here. It's like I make a joke with devotees. We should do a movie, and the movie starts out that when the spiritual world with Krishna was saying, you know, Krishna, I was thinking, like, I'd like to, be like you, because you're, cool. And, you know, everybody loves you, and I'm just, somebody here, you know. And everybody pays attention to you and not me, so I was thinking, you know, is there a place where I could be like you? And he says, yeah, but if you go there, you have to work. And he says, what's work? Because he doesn't know, because they don't work there. He says, well, you know, you have to buy things. What's buy? You need money. What's money? You know. And so he explains it all. You know, Krishna explains everything. Well, it works with money. I mean, in the spiritual world, you just think it and it's there. So there's no work. So he's trying to adjust to it all, right? And then he says, that's really tough, hard. And Krishna says, yeah. And he says, well, do they have any fun? He says, yeah, on the weekends they knock a little ball in the hole. And he's like, what? Well, some people knock a ball back over a net. And some people kick a ball. And some people hit a ball this way. And he's trying to think, wait a minute. How is that fun? You know, he's completely confused. So sometimes I joke and say, well, if Krishna would have told us before, we wouldn't have done it. Because now we're here and oh my God, this was a huge mistake. I chose to come here. Right? So it's something like that. Okay, you know, knowing what I know now, would I have chosen this? So you get in touch with what's important for you, right? And that's where you live, and that's where you make your decisions. And the only way to do that is, number one, understand what it is you want, what's important, what are your values, right? And then number two, when those conditioned values start to direct you, not only your mind, but even more difficult, your feelings, your emotions. I need this, I have to have this. You know, you see something and you start drooling. I have to have that. You know? When it's on an emotional level, it's really difficult to detach, isn't it? Don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you feel. But you want to connect with what's important for you. Like I had a very funny experience. We lived in India. We wanted our daughter to spend time in Mayapur and get education, get the culture. So we went for 6 years, right? And then we'd come back to America. You know? So I'd always joke with my wife, Indians are coming to America. We're going to India. You know? I was like, something wrong with this picture. You know? So, you know, for us, it was like, okay, what's important for us now? What's important for us is we could spend time in the Dham. We want to do it. It's a good time for our daughter. She can do it. She can be homeschooled, etc. So we lived in a place which is exactly 50% the size of the house we live in America. And land-wise, it's like a 20th of the land. So that's where we have land. And it was incredible because it was what we wanted to do. It was true for us as what we valued, right? So you may value something simple and little, and you'll be happy. And if you value something simple and little, and you're programmed to go for something big and more, you end up depressed because when you get it, you see it doesn't make you happy. You know there's more depression in America than anywhere in the world because we're the wealthiest country. And when you Alanis Morissette, she's a Canadian rock star, and she said something that puts this in perspective. She said, I thought the fame and the success would fill the emptiness inside of me for love and affection. Because when I get all the appreciation from people, I thought that would fill the emptiness, and it didn't. Oh, that's perfect. John Lennon, in the height of the Beatles, said, we had success, we had money, we had everything. There's one thing we didn't have, joy. Yeah. And if you see interviews of wealthy or successful people, this is a very common theme. I thought it was going to fill something inside of me, right? So we have to know what it is that's going to fill us, because if as Stephen Covey, I call Dr. Covey, he gave an example. You put a ladder against the wall of success, and when you get to the top, you realize it was against the wrong wall. Kind of common, right? And that is probably the most depressing, at least in my estimation, because if you're on the bottom of the ladder looking up, you'll always think, when I get there, I'll be happy. But when you finally get there and you're not happy, it's more depressing than being down, because down you have something to look forward to. But once you get it, and so you have to know what's important for you, distinct from what society has said, what your parents have told you would make you happy, and so forth. My generation was a whole generation that rejected every value that society placed on us. We completely turned away from it and said we don't want it. It didn't work out so well because we didn't have an alternative, but at least we were reflecting, looking at what was wrong. And many, many people today are going back to the land. They've never farmed, they're going back to the land, you know. I asked, when I was in India, with a bunch of IT students, I said, you know, I was just told there's a man in India, he's doing organic gardening on 20 acres. He makes $100,000 a year off 20 acres organic gardening. I said, if your parents knew that, would they send you to agricultural school instead of IT? And they said, yeah, they would. Because it's not about anything other than money, right? And America is proven that that's not where happiness lies. Actually, they've done studies. The biggest upgrade of happiness is if you go from poverty to middle class, because in poverty you're always in anxiety and you don't have proper health care. You may not even have sufficient food and clothing and so forth. But once you get to middle class and you go to upper class, the jump in happiness is almost unnoticeable. It's a jump in comfort maybe. But a lot of people actually have more anxiety when they have more money, because it's like, now what do I do with it? And you have more friends. So-called. I want to tell you, I was talking with Ambarish, Henry Ford's great-grandson, and I was telling about this book I'm writing on the chapter of materialism, and he was joking, I don't know anything about that, materialism. And I go, your great-grandfather, it's his fault. And he said, I want to tell you something. He went into depression, because after he developed this factory, he saw what it had done and what it was going to do, and he went back on his farm and renounced everything and just lived the way he used to. Isn't that interesting? It completely upset him because he saw the conditions that people were living in, and he saw where it was going, industrialization, and he completely flipped around and turned off the world and went back and just lived a simple life, the way he was living before. Isn't that interesting? Insider information you only get from Mahatma Das. When I heard that, I was really happy. So, not happy for him. I was happy that I heard that, and he was happy that he did it. So, you understand your conditioning, and then you understand what's important for you. What do I want in my life? Do I want a life where I have more time for my family, for my spiritual life, time to go to India, time to read, or do I want a life where I have other things? What am I going to give? We'll talk about this tomorrow. I have to give up something to get something. So what am I going to give up? What's important? So once you understand what your values are, what's important, it's easier to understand these conditioned thoughts. They're not yours. But if you don't understand it, then when these thoughts come, you think, oh, that's what I want, because that's what you've been conditioned to believe you want. inside on a subtle level, you know you don't want it. You know it's out of alignment. But you have to have clarity to see that. So once you see that, then your thoughts come, and you just think, oh yeah, those are just thoughts. That's all they are. That have nothing to do with me. So I'm not going to feed them, and like a guest, when I don't feed them, they go away. The problem is we feed those thoughts. You ever have a bad thought, like today your husband said something really nasty, and you're still thinking about it? Right? Why would you want to think about it? It's just making you miserable. Right? So that's the way the mind works. Now, here's the good news. You don't have to think about it. You can just go blow it away. You could actually do that. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, but you can actually do that. You can just, oh, he's having a bad day. And it's over. And it's gone. So a lot of us don't realize how much power we have to control our thoughts. So when these thoughts come that I don't want, right? I'm thinking about something which absolutely has no benefit for my spiritual life. I can just go, bye-bye. I don't need you. I'm not going to feed you. It's like this devotee said in 11th canto. The thoughts are there, and if that's my condition and they have to be there, then it's okay. But I'm going right. The thoughts are saying going left. It's okay. I'm not going left. I know that I want to serve you. That's what I know. Now it's really interesting also. 9th chapter, text 30, apichet suduracharo. It's the verse where Krishna says, even if you do something suduracharo, something really bad, but if you get back up with determination to serve me, then you're a sadhu. So what's going on here? Krishna's saying he's remorseful for what he did, and he's determined to go forward. And therefore he's a sadhu. That's the qualification. Not that he did the wrong thing, or in this context, not that you had the bad thought, but you have realized that's a bad thought. I feel bad that I have it. I'm not going to give energy to it, and I'm going to go right. You're a sadhu. Sadhu doesn't mean you don't have bad thoughts. Sadhu means you always go right when the bad thoughts pull you left. Otherwise, if you don't understand that, you're just going to be depressed your whole life because you're going to have so many bad thoughts. How could I think such a thing? I've been a devotee for 5 years. Why am I thinking such a thing? I'm so envious of him. No. That envy has been cultivated for 1,000,000 lifetimes. Right? Is it a surprise that we're envious? It shouldn't be. If someone said I'm not envious, I would be surprised. Like, what's wrong with you? Isn't it? Or you came from some other planet or something? So when you see you're envious or you see you're jealous, that's just normal. But don't become discouraged by it. Just think, oh, that's normal. Like my knee, it's 6 weeks and it's still not completely healed. Well, it's going to take another month or two of therapy. That's normal. So now I know it's normal. It's like, okay. Otherwise I'm like, is my knee ever going to heal? Am I going to be crippled my whole life? Can I walk again? No. Oh no, you'll be fine. So now I know. So, okay. All right, don't worry about it. Just do your exercises, forget it. So, envy, jealousy, lust, anger, greed, all these things we've cultivated for many lifetimes. So, it's normal. There's a funny conversation. They were talking about, Prabhupada was with some men, and they were talking about sexual control, and one devotee said, I have no sex desire. Prabhupada said, go see a doctor. So, you have a body, you have so many desires, right? You have a mind, you have a heart, you have so many things going on, right? So the trick is not to give into it, not to identify, that's me. Oh, this is the kind of person, I'm a very lusty person, I'm a very greedy person. No, you're not a lusty, greedy person. You have lust and greed in your heart. Don't identify, don't make that your identity. I am blank. That word you put after blank can completely change your life. I am spirit soul. I am part and parcel of Krishna. I'm servant of Krishna. I'm lusty. If you believe you're lusty, then what are you going to do? You're going to just do it. Yeah. You believe you're envious? That I can't help myself. It's just how I am. That is the biggest lie I've ever heard in my life. Krishna's endowed you with independence. There's no verse in Bhagavad Gita that says that you can't, even in the mode of ignorance, you can get out of it because you always have a choice. The most wretched alcoholic at some point in his life can make a choice, I'm going to the 12-step program and cure himself. You always have that choice. So, it's not just you may have a tendency for addiction, still you can do something. Isn't it? Whatever it is. Or I can't help myself, No, it's not true. So that's briefly how you get your mind together. So maybe you have some questions we could discuss more, get some clarity. I think I made my point.
Very clear.
So, what do you want? What do you want? What's your life about? What's important? And then immediately you can distinguish. Oh, these thoughts, there's nothing. Otherwise, you think those thoughts are, that's me, that's what I want. I told you this history of consumerism because I think it's important. I think it's really important to understand that we are being bamboozled by advertising. And if we were born 100 years ago, we would not have the same minds we have now. We would be much different people. Your grandparents were much different people. Much different. Much different values, right? Everything different, right? So now if you were born this year, your whole worldview, your view of marriage and society, and totally different, right? Same soul in the body, born in America now, different, everything different. So you want to understand that condition, what it is and what you want to be and who you are. I think if you look at the Gita, Krishna's talking about what's your varna, what's your nature. It's all about, Krishna didn't say, Arjuna, go to, IIT, that'll be the best thing for you. You'll get a good job. You got to make more money. No. It was all about, no, this is what you do, because this is your nature. So you also want to be a little more connected to, what is my nature? How can I, at least maybe even if I can't apply my nature in my work because I have a certain education, this is what I have to do, and you're not bold enough to break out of that and do something new, but at least you could apply it in your service. My parents wanted me to do this, but actually I wanted to be an artist. Okay, so now for Krishna you can. Or I wanted to make movies, but they wanted me to do something more secure. Okay, maybe all my spare time I'll make movies. Whatever. So that also, that gives you fulfillment. And when you have that fulfillment, all these other desires, they get smaller. Did you know that? Mm-hmm. When you connect with your Dharma, you become happy. And when you're happy, your desires go down. Because you can only be maddened by desires if you're a very miserable person, or very illusioned, or very envious, and very ambitious to be number one, best. But if you're happy in your varna, your ashram, your family, you don't have so many desires. You don't need. I'm working on a project. I'm so satisfied. And I have time for sadhana. Got a good family. Wow. They say 90% of your happiness comes from your family. On the material level. You have bad things at home. Doesn't matter what you do. You come back home. It's not happy. I don't know how many six packs you have. When you're not at home, you come back home, you're coming back to the same thing. So, your varna, connecting with what you were made to do, that's right for your nature, nice family, that's it. That's where you can be more satisfied. And of course, your spiritual sadhana. Yeah. Okay, I'll stop. You can ask questions. Yes?
Thank you, Prabhu. Your talk really resonated with me.
Good, thank you.
So, the question that I had was, when you say don't believe everything you think, how does that operate in relationships? Because does that mean you just take things at face value when somebody says something to you and you don't make a judgment about it, or you don't think anything? Like, how do you interpret? How does your...
It's a complicated question because it'll depend on the relationship. You mean they act a certain way and then okay. I didn't say don't believe some things you think. When I say it meant, I guess I need editing here. Don't believe everything doesn't mean literally everything. Just don't believe. Not necessarily everything you think is true. Not necessarily everything you think is not true. Sometimes you have to question it. You know, like I think this is what's going on. I have to question it. And sometimes the answer will be an intuition. It won't be it'll come through intuition. Because sometimes intuition transcends your logic. And then you understand it on a different level. I generally have found when people have strong intuitions, it's usually, don't ignore it. You know, unless your intuition is just based on some wrong facts or misinformation. But intuition is very powerful. And if you're not sure, just wait on it. But we're not all pervading and all knowing. I think also in relationships, if at least I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but I can say my observation is a lot of people like one another, but they're not meant for one another. They're actually a bad couple, but there's something that they connect with, but it's not marriage. It shouldn't be marriage. So if you're detached enough to not believe everything you think, then you might have be objective enough to be able to look at that and go, I like him and this and that, but I can see this, that, it's not going to work. I mean, we're talking about my whole life with this. I mean, I like hanging out with him, but how about the next 65 years? You want to hang out with him for 60? No. You have to start detaching a little. So sometimes our thinking becomes obscured by our attachments. So, because the attachment, you make everything look good. Then you get married and you get a little detached after a while. And then when you're a little detached, it doesn't look so good. So if you get a little detached before, then you'll be able to see if this is... and also, if your expectations are real and the way you value marriage, if you're even actually looking at it as what it is, as opposed to what you believe it is or want it to be, and it isn't. So objectivity, detachment is really important. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's very... unless you want to give a specific answer.
May I ask a follow-up? So I was wondering more about, like, if I have an interaction with, say, a fellow devotee, and something is said which I perceive is not favorable for me to hear.
Mm-hmm. About you or about someone else?
About someone else.
Okay.
But I don't know in the moment if I should think more about it or how I should, because I can't contradict it in the moment, but But then my mind kind of goes both ways, because it tends to say, maybe they didn't mean this, or maybe, but then I don't know what to think. I get all jumbled.
Uh-huh.
So
That's a very, okay. Well, I can give a general principle. If somebody says something bad about another devotee, as a general principle, we should distance ourselves and not like it. And there is another strategy you can use, is don't think about it. Because we are instructed that if there's a difference, opinion between two Vaishnavas, or now it's between you and this Vaishnava, and probably not everybody agrees with him, we're instructed, don't think about it. Just don't, because you may not be able to resolve it. And some advice that I have adopted myself, is if something's drawing me in that has a negative tone to it or nature, I pull out. And so someone may say, what do you think about this? And I say, I don't want to think about it. Because by thinking about it, I'm going to make offense, or I'm just going to have a negative attitude. Nice story of Nelson Mandela. He was being interviewed, I think by Oprah or somebody. I think when he was the president or prime minister, whatever he was. And other people have asked him this question: how did you deal with the fact that now you're running a government and you're working with the people who put you in prison? Like, how do you deal with that? And aren't you angry with them? And he was very forthright. He said, yes, I'm definitely angry with them, but I'm not gonna hold on to it, because if I do, it'll destroy me. So isn't that interesting? Like, he's angry, but he let it go. He's like, I'm not going to say I'm not angry. Okay, you hurt me. I don't like that, but I'm going to let it go because it's going to take me down the wrong road. So that's a good policy. That's probably one of the most important things I could ever teach anybody, because I see it so needed, and we get so wrapped up in the negative when something bad happens, and yeah, like you said, maybe a bad day, or maybe a misunderstanding, whatever it is. And I just read ooh, where did I read it? Amazing letter by Prabhupada I read today, and he was saying we should always be enthusiastic, don't be discouraged. He said, I was never discouraged and had every reason to be discouraged. Not one of my godbrothers helped me. He said, but if you allow yourself to be discouraged, you can't do anything. So it's the same point, like, I'll give you an example. There's a guaranteed way to become discouraged. Just contemplate something you don't like over and over and over again. At a certain point, you'll get completely frustrated and discouraged. And I think that's what Prabhupada was saying. I never contemplated it. I have every right to be discouraged, but I never allowed myself to be discouraged. So I think that is so important, because most of us get caught in something negative, whatever it is, or I did something wrong, now I'm just down on myself, right? Now I'm discouraging myself because I think I'm bad. Okay, I did something wrong, let's rectify it, let's move forward. Don't allow yourself to become discouraged. Don't allow yourself to get involved in controversies or, I travel a lot, so I see sometimes some not nice things going on. Devotees tell me, oh, this and that. And I always think, oh, we have more service to do to make things better. If I think, oh, ISKCON's bad, then I become discouraged. Oh, there's bad things going on in ISKCON. No. Oh, if there's bad things going on, how can we be a better example? What can we do to help it? So then you're always flipping it positive. That's how you be successful. You want to hear some ISKCON history? There was a period of time, as some of you may or may not know, some of you may know, there was a period of time after Prabhupada left, which was a very difficult time. It was about middle 80s. It was very good after Prabhupada left for a while. There were problems, but things were getting better. But middle 80s was difficult. And some of our leaders were leaving their post as guru. So for us, it was very discouraging, especially a lot of us, we couldn't do anything. And at that time, a lot of devotees were kind of leaving ISKCON or giving up their service or being in ISKCON but not enthusiastic. And at that time, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was developing lots of programs and traveling to Africa, and I noticed, I became aware of what he was doing, and he never got involved in any of that, and he just went forward positively, and I think that's the because, that's the best solution to a problem is, So, I don't know if that answers your question either.
It does.
Oh, good, yeah. But that's what I've learned in my life, because I'm always asked, what do you think about this? And my answer, if it's going to pull me into something negative, my answer is, why should I think about it? I only have so much mental energy. I'd rather put that into my service than think about this. Like, what's the point of thinking about it? Now, if that's my service, okay, then I have to think about it. Or if it's guilt by omission, like I'm in a position where I should be thinking about it and I'm trying not to, okay. But if I don't have to, why should I? Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
She's
kind of
so humble. You're so humble.
So, I have a two-part question.
Okay.
So, what it takes to be like that? What it takes not to be discouraged? What it takes to, sit with thought like this? What it takes. And then second part of this question is, how to handle the situations where the control is not somewhat in your hands. For example, this criticism. So, when you have someone equal... Okay.
Let's do part one.
Okay.
Part one is, how do you let go of the thought or the negativity?
Right.
How do you develop that habit?
Yes.
That's a very good question. And I think the short answer is, you have to want to. You have to want to more than you don't want to. In other words, let's say, for example, I have a habit of getting angry, or I have a habit of being critical, or I have a habit of being envious, or whatever. And, well, let me go backtrack. Sometimes I counsel couples and they say, we fight all the time. I say, oh, do you like to fight? He said, no, we don't like to fight. I go, yes, you do. Because people who don't like to fight don't fight all the time. In case you didn't know that. We're trying to make believe, no, we don't like to fight, it's just we're a bad couple. No, you like to fight. Some people do not, some people, they don't like to fight. And it doesn't matter what's going on, they don't fight. They just don't like to. It's not their nature or desire. Or maybe it is their nature to fight, but they've come to a point where they find fighting wrong, distasteful, not productive, and so on. So, there was a slave who became a politician in America, and they asked him the same question they asked Mandela. You were a slave, now you're working with the people who enslaved you. How do you do that? They enslaved your relatives. How can you work with them? And he said, I'll never allow anyone to degrade me by causing me to hate them. In other words, he understood his values. These are my values. My values, I'm not going to hate anybody. So there's nothing you can do to get me to hate you, because I'll never degrade myself to that level. He had that integrity, he had those values, and he was so connected with his values, he wouldn't allow. You see, that's how it happens. And I'll tell you another story. I was managing a temple, and it was very difficult, and I was getting very angry. It was also a language problem. They didn't understand the language, and we were doing something for which most people didn't have experience. You know what it's like to work with people who don't know how to do something, and you have to get it done. It's very frustrating. So at one point, I got frustrated with myself. I said, I don't want to get angry with these devotees. I don't want to have that demeanor. I don't want to live this way anymore. And actually it just stopped. It hit a threshold. And I could see what happened was, it's like, I'm not going to argue. And I did that in my marriage, whatever my wife would do, I'm not going to argue with it. It's just like, that's just what she does. And somehow or other, even I didn't like things, or I didn't like what those devotees were doing, or I may not have liked sometimes what my wife would do. It just didn't bother me anymore, because I made that decision that not getting angry was much more important, or it was just the right thing to do. And previously, I was just allowing myself to be manipulated by it. So what I've found is, you have to, like we're going to talk about humility. What's the secret to becoming humble? The desire to be humble. If you don't want to be humble, you can go to 350 of the best classes on humility, and it's not going to make a dent on you. Seriously, it won't. Of course, the idea is those classes will implant the seed of desire to be humble, but unless there's a desire. So that's why I joke with people. You like to fight? No, we don't like to fight. Yes, you like to fight. How can you tell me you don't like to fight? And you just told me we fight all the time. Who does something all the time that they don't like to do? So, if you're always getting angry, you have to admit to yourself, I like to get angry. That's just who I am. And if I want to change that, I have to consciously decide with determination that this is not what I want. And it's got to go deep. It can't just be like, I'm going to decide tonight. It's got to have context, like ramification. If I keep getting angry, what's going to happen to my relationships? What's going to happen to my job? What's going to happen to my kids? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my Krishna consciousness? When it all comes to that point, then it hits deep inside. It almost goes in your nervous system, and there's like, it changes. And all of a sudden, your anger issues are like 80% under control, even though you thought they were out of control. because it's so detestable for you now. And the thing is, when you're on this level, you catch yourself. Not after apologizing, before you catch it before. You're aware of it because you don't want it and you see it coming. So I think for many of us, we allow things to happen, to be controlled by them, because we don't care that much not to be that way. It's like, why are you lazy? You could get more done. I don't want to be lazy. Yes, you do. It doesn't feel like it, but if you didn't want to be lazy, you wouldn't. And a lot of those people at some point in their life, they stop being lazy because they realize it's not working for me. I need to achieve things I can't achieve. At japa retreats, we change the way they chant japa, but we have to change the way they think about it. It's not shnik shnik ram ram, it's a prayer. It's deep. So when they change it, their chanting changes. They overcome the past problem because they change attitudes. Because now they want to change it. Now they want to chant good japa. Oh, Prabhu, it's so hard to control the mind. It's so hard to chant good japa. So no, it's not. It's not. It's just you have to come to that point when you want to change it, and then you'll see. It's easy. Does that make sense? Was that what? I think there's more to answer that question, but I do a lot of talk about alignment. Here's our philosophy, and here's you. I call that the 19th chapter of the Gita. The 19th chapter of the Gita is your life. Does it align with the other 18 chapters? Write your life. Write how you think, how you live, breathe. Is that the same as the 18 chapters? It should be, ideally, right? So when you come to a point when you realize that Krishna consciousness is not just about rituals and execution of externals, but it's about living 24/7, then it's much easier because now you're in a different frame of mind. You're like, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do this 24/7. I'm supposed to be tolerant 24/7. I'm supposed to be humble 24/7. I'm supposed to be clean 24/7. Samodamastaposojam, Shantirajam, all these, and then the 26 qualities of devotee, all this is 24/7 activity. It's not just at the temple. And it can only become 24/7 when you're at that point, when you realize, that's what Krishna consciousness is. I'm supposed to be living example of what's taught in the Gita. When you get to that point, then you become aware when you're out of alignment. Before that, you're not even aware you're out of alignment, right? You're blaming someone, you're criticizing someone, and it doesn't even register. I'm not supposed to do that. Vaishnavas don't do that. You're doing that because you think you're smart, right? You're doing that because you think they deserve it. When you go into the alignment mode in your heart, immediately you catch yourself before you say one bad word. It's like, I'm not supposed to do that. That's not what a devotee does. Have you noticed that? You've heard a class, don't criticize, 3 days later, you're back to it. You want to know why? You want to know why? This is the reason why. Because you haven't realized that to be a devotee means you don't criticize. You haven't understood that because you think, I get up and chant my rounds, I'm a devotee. That's part of it. When you realize there's another, 18 hours of the day where you're not chanting, or 16 hours, where you have to be tolerant, non-envious, and so forth. When you realize that, then you start to see it. It's really clear. You start to get upset, and you just stop yourself and say, Prabhu, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Please forgive me. You catch yourself. Rather than previously, no, I was right to get mad at him, he deserved it. Isn't it? So I think that's super important. Alignment, it's not just Bhagavad Gita's, it's for when you go to the temple, you follow Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada said, it's on the battlefield, So you're asking, how can I be Krishna conscious at work? Well, that was Arjun's corporate office, Kurukshetra. So that was the first corporate lecture ever. How to practice in your work. So that's 24/7. And as I joke, every instruction of Bhagavad Gita doesn't have a disclaimer. This is only meant to be practiced at the temple. You can't do it at work. You can't do it with your wife. It's not like that. So when you understand that, then you start to look at your life in relation to what it means to be a devotee, not just 16 rounds and some puja, but everything else. And you want to hear something? I didn't realize this. This was told to me, but it's so interesting. If you look at the qualities of devotee, most of those qualities are in relation to other people. Tolerance, kindness, compassion. I mean, it could be in relation to ourselves also. We have to be tolerant of ourselves. But generally it's in relation to other people. So, do you deal with other people? Of course you do. All the time. Right? So, how do I practice Krishna consciousness at work? What better place? You're dealing with all kinds of weird people who test your tolerance, test your compassion, test everything, right? So when you're in that consciousness, then you're like, okay, this is perfect place. This is a perfect place to practice Krishna consciousness. Because if there's nothing to tolerate, how do you practice tolerance? Now I've got a lot of things to tolerate. When I was younger, my wife and I had started a jewelry business, and then when she got pregnant, I had to do it myself. And we would go out and sell jewelry at shows, but it was women's jewelry. So it was okay when we did it together, and she would deal with the women, and I would just take care of things in the back. Now it's me, so it's not the best thing for someone who's trying to be renounced to spend 8 hours a day surrounded by 20 women nonstop. And so I would think, well, how do I deal with this? And there's two ways to deal with it. One way is, how could you be Krishna conscious as a young man surrounded by 20 women for 8 hours a day? You just go, you can't, right? That's one way of dealing with it. So it's like, I can't control my anger, I can't this, I can't be Krishna conscious at work, household life's too hard, I can't be nice to my kids because I have this nature, whatever it is. That's called disempowering questions. That's like it's a given fact, I can't be, and you ask the question, how can I be Krishna conscious here? Meaning, I can't. But the question you're supposed to ask is, how can I be Krishna conscious in this environment? And a lot of us don't ask that question. We just assume we can't be, isn't it? Everybody knows that you can't be Krishna conscious in this environment. No Prabhu, no Mataji. Everybody doesn't know that. The Krishna conscious devotees, somehow, they don't know that. They don't know you can't be Krishna conscious in this environment. They only know how to be Krishna conscious. Right? So you ask the question, how can I be Krishna conscious in this environment? Or whatever the problem is. How can I control my anger in this environment? When my wife does this, when my husband does this, when my kids do that, when my boss does this, how can I be forgiving? How can I be tolerant? And guess what happens? You get the answer. And if you never ask the question, you never get the answer. Because you don't ask the question because you don't think it's possible. So when you come to this 24/7 thing, and you start to realize it's possible, then you start to see how off you are from the center. You become very aware of it. And if we're not like that, we don't become aware of it. You could be criticizing and yelling at someone and have no idea that you're doing that. And you'll go home and you won't even realize that you did the wrong thing. You've seen that before in yourself and others? I see it all the time. It's amazing. And when you're in alignment consciousness, catch yourself right away or you don't even do it. Because now, like Mandela or like this slave, you know who you are and what you want, and you're not going to allow anybody to pull you into something other than what you want. Like Radhanath Swami. Can you get Radhanath Swami to say something bad about anybody? Impossible. He never will. No matter what anyone says about him, that's his nature, that's his integrity, that's what he is. That's what he's obviously decided to do. He's that way anyway, but obviously he had to decide as well. Right? So when you make that decision, this is who I want to be, you'll be that person. So that's why I say, don't ever say, I can't control this or that. Just acknowledge that I'm not on that level where I'm convinced I should control it, or I want to enough. Does that make sense? She has a question, and then you have a question, and then he has a second question, and then she has a question. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Sorry I was late, and I think I missed some part of your class. Really wanting first class, listening, where a lot of classes I've heard like Prabhuji's like telling avoid the situations, but here you're emphasizing on emotional alertness, like how to get over them.
Yeah.
And that is very interesting.
Because we're in those, we can't avoid
Yes.
certain situations. We can't avoid. Yeah.
So that is something very interesting. So when I walked in, like you were talking about self-identity,
Mhm.
false ego. Now, when we are born, like, you know, parents, like, they started with, you know, telling, like, you are this, we are so-and-so caste, we can't go there, we can't eat this, we do
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
That's how we are conditioned.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, our identity, our position in the, you know,
Yeah.
world, like, or
Yeah.
like...
You see, you see through that identity.
yeah, and that's how you carry yourself, and that's how
Yeah.
you perform your duties.
Yes.
So now, like, you're working, females, like, you know, going out and working and as, like, you know, responsible position and all. And it tunes your mind, like how you talk, how you perform your job and all. And you come home and, you know, again, family, like, you know, you have to change your gears and all. But again, as you said, that ego, like, I'm so-and-so there and, you know, so-and-so different person. You know, all this for a devotee, I feel it's very difficult. Like, what would be your...
I can't say practically, but I could say there can be a shift of consciousness. That I would say it's on a fundamental level, it's wrong to think that I have to compromise my Krishna consciousness to achieve something material. Because I don't think, it can appear that way, but I don't think we can actually demonstrate that in the scientific experiment, that you'll actually be more successful. And if you look at any research which is done in the corporate world, for example, you know, it's competitive, but in most companies, the people who are most helpful get promoted because that's what managers need to be able to help people. So, or I heard one of the top corporate guys is saying, humility is no, Harvard Business School research, the number one quality, it's a recent thing I heard, the number one quality of a leader is humility. Isn't that interesting? I said, why? Because he'll listen. And if you don't listen, good ideas are going to come, and you're not going to feel people, hear people, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to leave. So I think it's really nice to kind of change the paradigm a little and see that all these sattvic qualities, that's really where the power lies. And if I have that faith and I live in that sattvic way, that I'll actually be more successful. I think it's sad if we feel we need to compromise. And we used to do that when we sold Prabhupada's books. We compromised some principles in order to sell the book, and Prabhupada said we didn't have to. And later on Prabhupada said, that's because you're a Vaishya, so you sold it that way. But if you were a Brahmin, you would have sold it by preaching. But if you're a Vaishya, you just say anything to sell the book. Mm-hmm. So he was saying, sell it like a Brahmin. So I can't say specifically, but I would like to just suggest to try to keep that integrity 24/7 and bring it there and see how you can employ your own Krishna consciousness in a way that would actually make you even better, more powerful, more exalted. Because if we don't do that, someday we'll read an article in, you know, Business Magazine about so-and-so head of this company who's the most spiritual, the most humble, the most forgiving, you know, all the qualities we're supposed to have that we thought we couldn't have because we would get walked over, and he's being glorified as like the most powerful person in the world because he, isn't it? That, yeah. Does that not make sense? Or?
I'm trying to connect the dots.
Okay. Of course, I don't know where you work, and I don't know the culture of your company, but you're going to have to adapt and adjust it to.
I work as a physical therapist, and I manage the clinic, so I'm in a managerial position. So a lot of things, like, you know, the way you think, and, you know, but then again, like, you know, you're in different situations because you're feeding there, like the way, like, you know, more corporate. It's challenging. So can you just like feel?
I wanna
Yeah.
tell you something. I was discussing this with my wife. It's so interesting. We had a devotee, he's not alive anymore, and he was an amazing manager. And Prabhupada said he was the incarnation of management. And I saw how he managed. You know, how the way he managed was to facilitate people. How can I help you do your job? What is it you want to do? How can I help you? So that's detached, like, how can I make you better? And Prabhupada said, if one of my disciples becomes a pure devotee, I'll consider my life successful and he'll take me back to Godhead. So that's the goal of the guru, that the disciple outdoes him. So that's real detached spiritual leadership. That you can, you're trying to make everyone better and help and serve, and natural human psychology, it all comes back to you. Because in any studies I've done about the corporate world, it's all people reciprocating with that kind of service with their boss. When they give, the people just feel like, I have to give back, indebted. And that's the main reason people stay. And the more personal it is, the more real you're concerned. Not just, for their work, but outside of work. How's it going? And if they need time off because there's some emergency and you don't give it, and they'll feel this is inhumane and they won't like you. So I think being compassionate, it's just like people become indebted to you, and that's statistical also.
So how do
But I don't know. Maybe your people are different.
So the self-identity here, like how.
What's your identity?
Yeah.
Okay.
How we maintain that, like as a devotee, but we are performing
Yeah.
different roles.
Okay. That's a good question. I'll answer it. I'll get to the answer, but I'll answer it in a different way first. I found this statement by Bhaktisiddhanta just totally amazing. He was talking about guru, and he said a guru, no matter, or even a pure devotee, no matter what resources they get in terms of money, followers, fame, praise, he said, nothing can sway them because they never can be budged from their realization that they're an insignificant servant of Krishna. So when I read that, I was like, wow, that's it, so wherever I go, whatever I do, even I'm the CEO of whatever, I'm still an insignificant servant of Krishna. Keep that mentality. Because I think the answer to your question may not externally be so different, but internally, I'm just a servant. And here's something really, really interesting. Are you all awake? After like 45 minutes, it's hard to concentrate. It's already 9 o'clock. Maybe I'll have to get more excited now. There is something called jana aparad. We have Vaishnava aparad. A Vaishnava aparad, as you know, means offending a Vaishnava. There's jana aparad, offending people. So we might think, oh, I didn't offend any Vaishnavas, I'm good, I just offend everybody else. No, but that's a contradiction, right? So Sanatana Goswami said, if you don't have alignment between how you act with devotees and how you act with the rest of the world, then you'll develop those tendencies, because you're allowing yourself to deal with other people in a certain way, then you'll develop those tendencies. So I have to be humble with everybody, not just devotees, right? Trinadapi Sunichena. Where does that say be humble only to devotees? It says, I think everyone, I respect everyone. So, of course, easier said than done, but that's the idea. It's not just devoted. Okay, I'm at work, you're spirit soul, Krishna's in your heart, I respect you as a divine being, namaste. I'm in my position, I'm paid by this company to be your servant, to engage you. So if you have that mentality, it's going to transfer. Different things will happen. People will feel it differently. You'll feel it differently. And you'll feel Krishna conscious at the end of the day. Because you don't want to compromise your essential identity as a devotee and all the consciousness that goes with it in order to do your seva. And that was, okay, let me go back. My story about jewelry. Well, before I was doing that, I was living in Vrindavan, teaching in the VIHE, which is, I pretty much doesn't get better than that in terms of environment, right? So now I'm thrown into the West, doing business in malls and this and that, and I asked myself a question. I said, this environment, it seems to be antagonistic to bhakti, at least compared to where I came from. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And I had to adapt. And I had a realization. I don't know if everyone would agree, but I think I became stronger than I was in Vrindavan because there was more to overcome. And I was able to be Krishna conscious in these environments which weren't Krishna conscious. And I looked back at it years later and said, that made me strong. And that, now I feel like, yeah, whatever, I did that. I can go anywhere. I know how to do it. But I had to surrender to the idea that I could do it, not the idea that I couldn't do it, which is the problem, right? How can you do this in this situation? You give into it because you don't see how to do it. I asked the question, Krishna, show me, because I need to learn, because this is what I'm doing. I was traveling alone. Is being alone good? No. I turned it into good. On those trips, I have a book coming out. This is all written on the road, in hotels. Alone, because there's nobody to bother me. So alone was good. I just had Krishna saying, hey, you're alone. Right. You have time. Nobody's going to bother you. Right? So take the bad. It's bad to be alone. Turn it into see opportunities. Right? I once drove from Florida to Pennsylvania or New York. I listened to Prabhupada walks for 17 hours. By the time I got there, I was like in another universe. So alone, not so ideal, became ideal. Right? So I think you have to ask those questions. But I like your question because I think there's a tendency to compromise. We compromise our Krishna consciousness in order to achieve results, and that's a mistake. We should always think the best results will come when I'm the most Krishna conscious. Last verse of Gita. Wherever there's Krishna Arjuna, there'll be success, victory, fortune. What else? Shri, Vijayo, morality, success, victory, fortune. Tattvasi, Vijayo, Bhuti. You'll just have to think about it and try to apply it.
That's true. Just recently, like 2 days back, I read my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. So he said, like, if your depth of sadhana, like, it is very strong, then nothing, like, small things will not disturb you.
Your consciousness will be deeper.
Yeah.
You'll be more connected. I think it's probably the worst thing we could ever do or think is that I have to compromise my Krishna consciousness to adjust. I may adjust externally, but internally, no. And when you don't adjust internally, people will feel it and they'll see it. They'll say, "Wow, you're different." I just got upset at you, and you were very nice to me. Why? Why did you do that? And you say, because I have something different. I understand you were stressed, and I didn't need to get upset with you. I needed to be kind to you. They'll appreciate it. Okay, she wants to ask a question.
Yes.
Well, he wants to ask. Oh.
Go ahead. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for the wonderful lecture. You made a point that if we understand our nature and if we act according to our varna, then the hankerings would not be there as much as it is now. And if I look back in my own life, almost everything whatever you said about why exactly we chose a particular occupation and why I'm doing it today, it's all because we are kind of programmed to think that this is the thing, but that's not my nature, and I understand it.
Yeah.
And I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
And that's causing me to look for happiness some other place, and I'm not as advanced as to take shelter of Krishna to find happiness.
Yeah.
So the question was, how do we understand what's my nature? And even if you want to do Krishna consciousness, so many things interest me. This also interests me, that also interests me.
We have a workshop for that. You have an answer?
I have a question, but I can just cite few things. He's asking basic question of how do I identify my nature, and that it can be characterized to
described as what is my character and what is my personality, so we can define our nature.
Mm-hmm.
So they are just the follow-up to add to this question.
Okay. She's saying character and personality also define your nature. I don't think this works for Indians, it works for Americans. I just tell them, ask your mother. Because you say, mother, what did I like to do when I was young? What did I do? She'll say, well, you were always putting cars models together or taking them apart or building something, right? Or what did you do when you were a kid? There's certain things that, you just like played music all day, or you painted all day, or you took photos all day, or you were creative, or you wrote, or you just, I just heard there's a kid by the age of 5, he read 190 books. A genius kid, so. What his parents are going to tell him to do. This guy's going to do. It's obvious, right? So that's one way. Another question would be to ask yourself, if Trump passed a law, and the law was everyone has to work, and everyone will get the same pay. It'll be sufficient. We'll all live a good standard, but nobody's going to get rich, and nobody's going to get more, or nobody's going to get less. You're the trash collector, you're a teacher in high school, you're a brain surgeon, you get the same pay. You're a physiotherapist, you get the same pay. You're in charge of the office, or you're not in charge, you get the same pay. Everybody gets a card, and they just check in the time, and at the end of the month, it goes to the government, and you get your check. What would you do? Would you do what you're doing now? How many of you would do what you're doing now? One has found it. If you raise your hand, that's perfect. If that were the case, and you're doing it now, then you're in your Dharma, for sure. So what, like I was saying, you may not be able to do that as your occupation, or you may decide you want to pull out and do it. But that's a good way of, answering that question. Like, if I could do anything and the pay was equal, what would I do? And it also causes us to ask the question, am I just working for the money? And is it worth it? Because if I would rather do this, even though it pays less, but I would be happier. If you're not happy and you're married, you're going to make your wife unhappy, you're going to make your kids unhappy. If you're frustrated, it's just going to come out on them, and that's not good. And I find it so interesting because Bhagavad Gita is all about Dharma. And, in India, what is it, like 4 dharmas now, right? Is it MBA, engineer, doctor, lawyer, is that it?
IIT.
Yeah. 5 dharmas, something like that. So I think that's unfortunate because it has its ramifications. I made a prediction last year that all of you who went to university here and then stayed here and then, when you're like 40 years old, you're not going to tell your kids to do what you did because you're going to be burned out. You're going to realize it. You're going to, my parents told me to do this and I did it and it had its, it provided this home and this is all good, but I don't think you should do that because I think by then you're going to really be feeling it. And especially if it gets in the way of your Krishna consciousness, where you're kind of tied in to a mortgage, this and that, and you can't get out now. And you're not getting much time for your bhakti, then it's even more frustrating, isn't it? So these are things to consider. I can't tell you what to do or not, but I think at least you can start from the point of you think, well, if I didn't have to work, if I could do anything and get the same pay, I would, you realize what you'd like to do. So I would just teach kids. Okay, so maybe you can start a Sunday school here. You just started in Krishna consciousness. And if you're more bold, then some of you might even actually be able to figure out how to do what you really want to do and make a living. It's also possible. which is really nice. Because that's what we should be doing. If we can, we should be. Worst case scenario, if one of you has a brain to run a business, then get all the computer programs and at least start your own business that starts at 9 and ends at 6. You know? And it's only devotees. So that would be the next best thing. You know? I think that's important also. Okay. I'll tell you a story. It was really interesting. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I stayed at my sister's house. And I told her, just give me till 1 o'clock every day. She wants to do things all day. And I wanted to just have my own time. And the thing was, I wasn't in the temple. And the temple has this regular schedule. And so for so many years, I've been doing this regular schedule. And I just totally broke off that schedule. And as soon as I got up, I read for like 3 hours. I read like 3-4 hours. Then I went and chanted my rounds. And then I wrote songs. I'm a musician. So every day I wrote a new song. She had a piano there. And I did that every day without thinking. It just did it. And then I said, oh, that's what the Mahatma machine does. He reads a lot, he studies, he plays music. It just became evident to me, that's what I do. So if you're ever in a situation, think, what would I do if I didn't have to do anything? What would I do? Right? Or that idea, what is that thought I always wanted to do? I always thought about doing. Those are some hints. But even if you can't do it, you can do it as a hobby. And then that, some fulfillment is there. It's one funny story. There's a devotee. He's an actor. During Prabhupada's time, he was acting. Right? He was part of what's called Vaikuntha Players, and Prabhupada paid for them, and they traveled all over the world, and they did drama, and Prabhupada loved their drama. So, one day I was in a park, and Shakespeare was going on. And I heard this voice. It was him, playing, playing a part in Shakespeare. And what had happened is the temple he was in, his drama troupe fell apart, so by nature, he couldn't stop acting. So he would just play Shakespeare instead of Krishna consciousness. So, we have a nature, and it's hard to just suppress it forever. And it can be frustrating. One last story. This might be the best. I have a friend, and she's a woman from Europe, was living in Dallas when I was there, and she plays guitar. So it's kind of cool. Guitar and a sari. It attracts attention. So we had a little band, bass, guitar, drums, keyboard, and we would go out to festivals and play. And so there's a lot, and we go to colleges, and we play in the restaurant in Dallas. So we were playing a lot, right? So I saw her years ago. She hadn't played music. She was the temple president in Columbus for several years. And then she got really, really ill. And she told me later she saw an Ayurvedic doctor, and the doctor said, the reason you've become ill is you're not playing music. Isn't that interesting? It's so much her nature that if she doesn't express it, the whole body just broke down. Okay. You're next.
Thank you for the class, Prabhuji.
You're welcome.
One question is coming in my mind.
Yes.
When we spoke about that we need to know what do we need to think and what do we need to not think.
Mm-hmm.
There are times always self-doubt is there whenever you want to compare where you are and where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
Doubt that you can never get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So self-doubt in a way is good so that you have room for improvement. If you don't ask somebody or get feedback,
Yeah.
you will never know if you're doing it right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Even with Bhagavad Gita starting with a self-doubt in Arjuna's head, whether he should do it or not. So my question is that if you don't do that, if you don't correct yourself every single time by asking somebody, how do you know in your own thought that it is right or wrong? Because some people they don't even realize if it is right or wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if we go back to that answer, if you have a standard for yourself, that's very clear, I would use the word integrity. What are your values? Are they clear? Then you just check in. Okay, am I being true to what I believe? Am I being true to my values, or am I pretending that I am and I'm not? You see, the problem, part of the problem is ego is such that it causes self-deception. So you lie to yourself. I'm okay when you're not. Like, I'm only going to have 3 potato chips. You've never, in your life, eaten 3 potato chips. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'll just have 3. I'm just a little hungry. Self-deception, right? It's like, so it's, I think also, to the degree that you want to realize how to make progress and realize what's wrong, to that degree the self-perception becomes more clear. And to the degree that you're able to have healthy self-doubt, then you won't be afraid to acknowledge the failures. But if you're afraid to acknowledge the failure because it makes you feel bad, then how can you look at it? You need healthy self-esteem to be self-critical. If you want to know what you're doing wrong, Krishna will arrange it. Either he'll reveal it to you or someone will just tell you. That's a fact. So it really depends on the way I see it and experience it. It depends on the degree that we're willing and open to be corrected and make advancement. Because if we want to come to this level, Krishna will get us there. And if we're only here, then we have to say, well, that's probably as far as I could take it right now. So Krishna didn't reveal that I'm making a mistake in this way, or he didn't show me. So that's our philosophy. Like, what we need to know, Krishna will reveal. In fact, Prabhupada said the goal of the Guru is to put you in touch with the Super Soul, who can guide you. That's interesting, right? Yeah. So, but sometimes you will need help from others. It's not just...
What if there's some other person or people, they are not even there or to help you whenever you need them? So why I'm asking this is because I have failed at times, many times, at what I do by profession.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the presence of the person or people that really need to tell me that what I need to do. And if you translate the same thing in your spiritual advancement, if you don't get correction from somebody who's seeing you or you need that, when you don't have that, what do you do? How do you...
You make the mistake and then you learn. When we started the movement, who did we have? Senior devotee was 4 years. That was the oldest. The oldest person I knew had been 4 years in ISKCON, and he was probably 29 years old. And we made a lot of mistakes. And Prabhupada, he knew that was going to happen. So sometimes you might be in a situation and that's all you can do is try, and if it doesn't work, then you learn. Some success gurus say that it's good to fail as much as you can, because you'll learn more quickly by failing. And some success gurus said there's certain things you have to fail. You can't learn any other way. It can't be that even someone can show you. You'll have to see for yourself. So in lieu of that outside help, that's usually what happens. And the key is to fail in a way that you can move forward and not become discouraged, and not think there's something bad about you. Which goes back to that point I made earlier, that we have so many bad qualities that we've cultivated for so many years. And to accept that, to be able to go forward and accept that that's just where we're at. Or I'm going to learn this. I became a guru. Basically no instruction how to do it. Did I make mistakes? A few, not big ones, thankfully. But how do you do that? How do you, And someday, you may have so many people you have to teach. How do you do that? Sometimes you make a mistake and there's a bad result and I shouldn't have said that. And it's unfortunate, we should be trained, but not always it's there. Yeah. I think the biggest problem is going to be in failing or in being aware of where we're wrong without failing, is our ability to, one, have the openness and freedom of ego to see it, and number two, to have enough self-esteem to be able to go forward when we see it and not become depressed by it. That's a huge problem, because it can be depressing, right? And if we don't learn to be able to see our faults, and we don't learn how to be able to take it in a positive way, it can be really difficult. Because then you'll subconsciously turn it off. You don't want to see them, because you don't want to admit them, right? And you may not even agree when someone points them out, if you're not able to take criticism or feedback. He's got the second part. Did that answer your question, or there's still more? Or?
No, it answered my questions, but I'll think about it more.
Yeah. If I know more specifics. Okay, let's take this to a more generic level. Sometimes someone will ask a question, or someone's in a situation, and externally there's nothing they can do to improve the situation. It's just the way it is. So your question is a little bit like that. I'm in this situation, I need guidance, and I can't get it. So then it's always internal adjustments that have to be made in those situations. You have to adjust internally to that reality. Okay, I was sent to be a temple president. I've been a devotee 8 months. I was 19. How do you do that? You do it. That's basically how you do it. There really isn't any other way. I was told there was $500 in the bank. When I went to the bank, there was 50. I went to take out 250 to pay the rent. There was only 50. What do you do now? You got to figure it out. So that's what Prabhupada did, and maybe it was circumstantial, or maybe Prabhupada thought that's going to be the best way for us to learn. We'll become super strong if we just, if we just do it, I heard this guy talking. It was so funny. He was saying, a lot of children will complain about having bad parents, and they didn't take care of them, or they weren't loving, or whatever, and it's true. And a lot of the people who had bad parents became the strongest people. You know that? Because there's so much opposition. They didn't have anything. Nobody taught them anything. And they had to learn themselves. They had to find mentors and read books and figure it out. But the funniest thing is, he said, and some people had super wealthy parents, and their lives are totally messed up, and they complain about the fact that their parents spoiled them, and that's why they're messed up. I grew up in a wealthy neighborhood. 2 of my friends killed themselves with overdoses of drugs because their parents were rich and they had money. And they were 16, 17, stupid. And so if they were in poor families, they wouldn't have had the money, they'd still be alive. So there's some truth to that in a sense. But 17 devotees joined in a year and a half, and I didn't know what I was doing. And all I did every day was pray, Krishna, I don't know what I'm doing, guide me. And then I said, Prabhupada, how do I do this? And Prabhupada wrote me a letter. He said, pray to Krishna that you don't know how to do this. That's what he said. Pray to him that you don't know how to do this, and the only way you can do it is if he guides you. So when there's no one to guide you, what do? You want to hear something really funny? This is like ancient ISKCON history, right? Okay, Prabhu, we need you to cook for the deities, but I don't know how to cook. Just go in the kitchen, pay dhanavats, and Krishna will guide you. Basically what it is. I mean, a little guidance, but basically on the floor. Here's some books. Go out and distribute. How to distribute? I don't know. Just do it. Just try it. So Prabhupada said every man is his own genius. So there was, there's obviously a need for training, but this other way of training shouldn't be thrown out completely, of just going out and, making it happen. So I think in my life as a devotee, there's things I didn't do because I didn't know how to do them. And at some point I said, it's never going to get done. I'm just going to mess it up. We're just going to do it, So like, just do it, and you'll get better at it, right? Do it. Better to do it poorly than not at all, and learn from it, right? Yes? Okay, your second question.
I think, with time,
Okay.
we should stop here. Roger.
Okay,
And,
we're going to stop. I know you all want to stay here till midnight. Vivian wants us to stop, so we'll go along with him. And tomorrow morning, I actually give class online on my Facebook page, because I do that every Saturday and Sunday. I don't think I can do it Sunday. But if you want to tune in, it's just on my Facebook page, Mahatma Das, or you want to come here,
yes.
I'll be here doing it live.
What time?
7:30. And once you go on Facebook, if you go on chat, you can ask questions. There's a lot of discussion. So, no, it's topical. We've been talking about mercy, and amazingly, the last class we were talking about balance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot about balanced personalities, imbalanced people, and deal with others in an imbalanced way, and see things in a black and white way. We had that discussion. So I think we don't have enough time to talk about balance, so I might talk a little bit about it. And a different area of balance than we'll talk about tomorrow, I might talk about that time. So I think it's an interesting topic.
Is it a phone or like you have
Facebook. It's just Facebook Live. So if you go on my Facebook page. Yeah. What?
I don't have Facebook, so it's just...
So unfortunate. If you don't have Facebook, then you'll have to go to my YouTube page and you'll see it there sooner or later. But you could always come here if you like. Or go to a friend's house who has Facebook. You can do Facebook like I do. I have other people manage my Facebook, so I never... People say, you're always on Facebook. I go, I'm never on Facebook, because they see all these posts on it. Someone else is doing it for me. Okay.
So we'll end here by thanking Mahatma Prabhu for this wonderful, wonderful talk. So different experience, right?
Yes.
Generally we hear so many Krishna conscious classes, but feels like, some different paradigm we were, putting our thought in. So very, very nice, but it's a lot more to come. So tomorrow, like Prabhu said, 7:30 here. Everyone is most welcome to join. And then we have more talks at our ISKCON of Richmond Krishna House Center. So tomorrow, our regular program starts at 11:30, and Prabhu's going to give another beautiful workshop on creating balance, art of creating balance.
Interactive.
Very interactive session.
We're going to make you work.
So from 11:30, it'll go till 2 o'clock. We'll have some kirtan and then short kirtan tomorrow, more of class time. And then after 2 o'clock, we'll have lunch for all the devotees. And then we'll start back at 3 o'clock with our humility workshop. It's an 8-hour workshop. So we'll do 3 to 7 tomorrow for 4 hours. And then again, there'll be dinner prasadam for all the devotees. And then Sundays will be the second session, starts 9 in the morning and then goes till 1. And actually we have a very, very nice initiation ceremony, a very beautiful initiation ceremony is going to happen after the workshop at 1 o'clock. And then again we'll have lunch prasad for all the devotees. So please, grab this wonderful opportunity to hear from Mahatma Prabhu. I didn't get to discuss with you, but is it okay if someone wants to come for personal darshan and ask questions and all?
Well, yeah, they can work it out with you.
Yeah, so we'll work out timings if you have some personal questions. As we know, Prabhu's been doing coaching and personal counseling, and especially your devotees. So if you would like, then Prabhu would be happy to do that.
I just wanted to say something about my book.
Yes.
Because the book I wrote was geared towards the non-devotee world, but it's perfectly suitable for everybody. But it doesn't have my devotee name on it. It has my birth name, because I have a company and I have another identity. We call my alter ego, so to speak. So this is my book, And that's my identity, without a dhoti. I keep the shaved head because I can't not have a shaved head. There's nothing growing, so I always have the shaved head. But devotees like the book, so it's not that you shouldn't get it. You'll benefit from it. And what I did was I took maybe like 10 years of teachings, and then I took all the essences in different topics. So there's 29 topics and put like 5, 10, 15 statements, just sutras. And one of the reasons I got the book was so people that I meet would get to know me better, and also people who wanted to invite me as a speaker or to do workshops would have the book. So not only for yourself, but you can also buy it for other people, or if there's any opportunity you think in the future where I could speak somewhere at an organization, a corporation, or whatever, at least if they read the book, they'll understand what I teach, and they'll either love it or hate it. But if they love it, then they'll know what they're getting into, and so that's part of it. And yes.
Yes, we have a lot of copies of this wonderful book, and I kind of testament. I just opened a random page, and I just read one of the essence, and it's been on my mind for 4 days. It's and that was like, we underestimate how much we can control ourselves, and we overestimate how much we can control others. And that's such a deep thought. So I'm thinking for last 4 days, and there are so many. So it's a wonderful book. We have many copies, so not just for yourself, but amazing gift to give. And donation-wise, any donation would be fine, or I don't know.
What does it say here? $9.95. But I don't want to hold you back. If you want to get more, that's fine. We have a company. It's called Sattva. So we're reaching out to the world, outside the devotee world, and trying to be relevant. Yes. And so we have to fund that work. There's so much to do. So your help is always appreciated. Thank you.
It's time a little late, but we have prasadam for all the devotees. So please honor prasadam to your full satisfaction before you leave, and then we'll meet again tomorrow. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Prabhupada.
Yes, ma'am.
Go to one of the children. Where do you see it? Oh yeah.
Okay. So if
You want me
you
to
want,
sign? Yeah.
then Prabhu can give a blessing on the book also.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I'll take one for now. Tomorrow I'll take more so that I can.
Your name?
Radhika Rati Devi Das.
Marika what?
Rati.